My family left for a one-week trip out of town, and unfortunately, I couldn't go with them because I had a slight fever. Today is my second day alone in the house, and because I still wasn't feeling well, I slept all morning. By the afternoon, I started feeling better, so I got up and made myself some instant chicken noodle soup. After eating, I turned on the radio and lay back down on the sofa. The music was soothing, and I began to feel sleepy again, so I decided to take a nap. As I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a soft knock on the door. Who could it be? I thought. I wasn't expecting anyone today, so I ignored it, thinking it might have been the wind. A few minutes later, I heard the knock again, a little louder this time. I got up, feeling slightly annoyed, and decided to check it out. When I opened the door, a cold wind swooshed over me, but there was no one there. Confused, I closed the door and went back to the sofa. After about 10 minutes, I heard someone murmur in my ear. Thinking it was just a dream, I ignored it. But then, I distinctly heard a voice say, "I'm here." My eyes snapped open, and I stood up from the sofa, heart pounding. I looked around the room, checking for any signs of an intruder. I ran to the door to see if it was still locked. It was. Then who was it? Am I hearing things? I wondered. Was it a ghost keeping me company? It was already 5 p.m., and it was starting to get dark outside. I thought watching the news might distract me, so I turned on the TV and switched to the news channel. I went to the pantry to grab some snacks, but when I came back, the TV was off. Shrugging it off, I turned it on again. After a few minutes, it turned off by itself. Now, I was genuinely scared. I approached the TV to check if it was plugged in properly, and it turned back on its own. I stepped back, grabbed the remote, and turned it off. Processing what had just happened, I went to the kitchen and sat at the counter. The lights started to flicker. "Oh Lord, don't let me see it," I prayed silently. Panicking, I ran to the door, deciding that if I saw something, I would bolt out of the house, rain or no rain. 10 minutes passed, and nothing unusual happened. Too scared to go back to the living room, I stood by the door. After 30 minutes, I felt tired from standing, so I sat on the floor with my back against the door. It was still raining outside, and I felt chilly. I didn't realize I had fallen asleep until I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning. I saw the first light of dawn and realized the rain had ceased. I felt relieved, but I couldn't shake the dread of what might happen later that night. As the day wore on, I tried to distract myself with chores and other activities, but the events of the previous night kept replaying in my mind. By the time evening rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I decided to keep all the lights on in the house. As a precaution, I double-checked all the locks and windows. Around 7 p.m., I made myself a light dinner, trying to calm my nerves. The house was eerily quiet, and every little creak and groan made me jump. I turned on the TV again, this time to a light-hearted comedy, hoping it would lift my spirits. I sat on the sofa, clutching a blanket around me for comfort. An hour later, the TV flickered again, then went off. This time, the power in the entire house went out. I was plunged into darkness. My heart raced, and I fumbled for my phone to use its flashlight. Just as I turned it on, I heard the same soft knocking on the door. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to check, but something compelled me to move. Slowly, I approached the door, my phone light trembling in my hand. I reached out to open it, but before I could, the knocking stopped. I waited, listening intently, but all I heard was the pounding of my own heart. Gathering my courage, I unlocked and opened the door. Once again, there was nothing but the cold night air and the dark, empty yard. I closed the door and turned back to the living room. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushed past me, though all the windows were closed. The air grew heavy, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. I spun around, shining my flashlight in every corner, but I saw nothing. Just as I was about to sit back down, I heard a whisper, "I'm here." The voice was so close, it felt like it was right next to my ear. I screamed and ran to the kitchen, grabbing the biggest knife I could find. My hands were shaking, and tears streamed down my face. I didn't know what to do. I decided to call my family, but there was no signal. Desperate, I tried to calm myself by repeating, "It's just your imagination." But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. For the next few hours, I sat in the kitchen, clutching the knife and my phone, waiting for morning to come. The house was silent, but the oppressive feeling of being watched never left. Eventually, exhaustion overcame me, and I dozed off. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and sunlight streaming through the windows. It was 6 a.m. The power had come back on, and everything seemed normal. But I couldn't shake the fear that gripped me the night before. I spent the rest of the day trying to avoid being alone in any room for too long. I called a friend to come over, but she couldn't make it. As night approached, I felt the dread returning. I kept all the lights on again and decided to sleep with a lamp by my bed. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, listening for any sound. Around midnight, I heard the whisper again, "I'm here." I bolted upright, scanning the room with my flashlight. The air felt thick, and I struggled to breathe. The voice continued, getting louder, "I'm here." Terrified, I ran out of the bedroom and into the hallway. The lights flickered, and I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't dare look back. I rushed to the front door, flung it open, and ran outside into the cold night. I didn't stop running until I reached a neighbor's house. Panting and shaking, I banged on their door. When they answered, I must have looked like a madwoman, but they let me in and called my family. I stayed with my neighbors until my family returned from their trip. When they came back, I told them everything. They were skeptical, but they could see how shaken I was. We had the house blessed and even brought in a professional to check for any logical explanations. Though nothing unusual was found, I couldn't bring myself to stay in the house alone again. The experience had left a deep scar, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was there, it was still watching, waiting for another opportunity to make its presence known.